Live from clickorlando.com, this is News 6 at 5:30. This is a News 6 Plus takeover. Here now is Chief Meteorologist Tom Sorrells with Talk to Tom.
Welcome back to Talk to Tom. My name is Tom Sorrells. I am the Chief Meteorologist here at WKMG News 6. Thank you so much for tuning in. This show is my favorite thing that I do all week. It really, really is. You know, it's become a show for me to do and talk to you at home, the viewer, and I just love it. It did not start out to be its own show. We stumbled upon this back in 2004 during Hurricane Charlie. We had not had the eye of a hurricane come over Orlando since 1960, and people had questions, and they were calling the newsroom constantly. And Angel Blasquez, our executive producer here at WKMG, came and said, why don't you just answer these on the air? And we're like, well, what are we going to do? And they said, just use radar, zoom in, show them. And we did, and I said, what are we going to call this? He said, just call it Talk to Tom. So that was an Angel Blasquez invention that I took and ran with, and it became a Facebook show for me for the longest. And then last summer, during Hurricane Ian, my general manager, Jeff Hoffman, decided that it was going to be an awesome thing that he would do, that he was looking for new ways for us to do weather on TV, and he said that we would do Talk to Tom as a full-time show. So here we are, doing Talk to Tom as a show every Thursday afternoon and constantly on News 6 Plus. You can stream it anytime you want. The way it goes is you send in your questions, I answer them. Coming up, we're going to talk to a researcher who focuses specifically on hurricanes. He's going to tell us what you need to know about the season, the seasonal forecast. I think you know who I'm talking about. I'm talking about the man, Dr. Phil Klotzbach, who is the best hurricane seasonal forecaster in the business. But first, as I do every week, I'm going to answer some of your questions. If you'd like to submit a question, just go to clickorlando.com/talk-to-Tom. With the season upon us, I've gathered a bunch of your hurricane questions that you've submitted. The first one comes to us from our friend Luis. Luis says, hurricanes are supposed to lose intensity if they are going fast. That does not seem to be the case in recent hurricanes. What's going on with that? Okay, Luis, you'd have to be more specific on that. Normally what you're talking about is that if a hurricane has really fast forward progress, if a storm is out over the open water, it's racing along at 25 to 30 miles per hour coming across the Atlantic, it can't get itself organized. For a hurricane to get really well organized, it stacks well from bottom to top. Good inflow, good outflow, good center. If it's going really fast, they tend to tilt, like everything else, or tilt, depending on which way they're going. And the tilt messes it up, and the hurricane can't grow fast. By the time a hurricane is racing over land, though, like Hurricane Charlie raced through here, it did not lose a lot of its intensity, and that's a kind of a double-edged sword. You'd like for it to move on through pretty quickly and get on out of here. But a hurricane will also lose half of its intensity for every 6 hours it is over land. With a situation like Hurricane Charlie, it made landfall as a very strong hurricane, and by the time it got to us 4 hours later, it had not been cut in half. It still had wind speeds of 90 miles per hour by the time it got to us. And so it was a disastrous situation, bringing down canopy damage, trees, and the whole 9 yards. So normally over the open waters, if a storm's racing along, that's right, it cannot gather intensity. But if it's racing along when it makes landfall, it doesn't have time to be cut in half. The friction of the earth, the interaction with buildings, trees, and the earth's surface doesn't have time to take away its power before it thumps us. So that's the basic dividing line. Okay, Candace, you keep saying go to your safe space during a tornado watch. Your safe space. But I live in a small mobile home. Where is my safe space? There are no available permanent structures around me. Any suggestions? Well, Candace, I don't know exactly where you live. I've seen lots of mobile home parks that have a place, a more sturdy building, a brick building, where people escape to during a tornado warning. But during a tornado watch, when you're sitting around waiting for things to happen, I guess you wouldn't want to go to a solitary, lone standing brick building. Thing of it is, you're going to find somewhere else to go. And during a tornado watch, I don't think they open most of the shelters per se like they do during a hurricane warning. Anytime there's a hurricane coming, no, you should not try to ride out the hurricane in your mobile home if it's a category 2 or 3, if it's coming through here, because The sustained wind could take you down, and B, they spawn tornadoes left and right. So if we're expecting a big tornadic outbreak, I'd encourage you not to stay in your mobile home, but to seek shelter with family and friends, someplace safe like that. If you are in a county or a place or a city where there's a tornado warning and you think it's going to be close to you, we've given you like it's going to be on top of you in 15 minutes or so, I've been told that they don't like for us to say this, but big buildings like a Walmart is normally really super strong. I've seen any number of videos shot out the front side of a Walmart where the glass will go and the metal will go, but inside the building, people hang on. Allegedly, they do not want me to tell you to go there. I've heard this at the conference time and time again, but between you and me, doll, if you can get yourself to a Walmart, I think you'll do better than you would in a mobile home. Okay, we'll see if they come after me. But I'm telling you, to save your life, get yourself to a bigger, stronger building. All right, next one comes to us from our friend John Christie. John wants to know, does geoengineering play any part on hurricanes, strength of storms, etc.? Okay, by geoengineering, John, I think you mean what we're trying to do to battle climate change. I don't really know what you mean otherwise. To me, geoengineering means the effort that we're undergoing to help change global weirdness, the impacts of man on the climate. I think that's what you're referencing. And as far as geoengineering of the coastline, no, plays no part whatsoever in the strength of the storms. It will eventually play a part in the impact if we can mitigate the coastline, build up better protections, make sure we all have mangroves there instead of just sand and little sea oats. Mangroves do a much better job of keeping the storm surge at bay, or out to the open water, if you will. But the other geoengineering that I'm more interested in, I think you might be referencing, is the climate change geoengineering. And I really believe you've heard me say here any number of times on Talk to Tom that in the future, carbon capture, I think, is going to be one of the biggest savers of the day. I don't know how fast we can do it or how quick we can do it, but I don't believe the planet is totally doomed. I don't. I think we're good. It's a man-made problem. I think there are going to be man-made solutions. It's going to be a way that we battle climate change by 100 cuts or 1,000 different moves. You see people all the time talking about electric cars versus gasoline-powered engines. That's a big slap. That is a big cut. That's a big step forward in doing the right thing. I think just as big in the next 10 years or 15 years is going to be carbon capture, where we have devices that suck in the atmosphere, suck in air, strain out the carbon, put the oxygen back out the other side, the nitrogen, the normal air out the other side without carbon, and turn that carbon that captured in the filter into a rock that goes back into the earth, or use it to create cement. I think carbon capture is going to be the deal. Will that play any part on hurricanes? Well, maybe. You know, if we can get the earth cooled down another degree or so, we might go back to having hurricanes that don't deluge us with 30 inches of rain on the regular. I think that's one of the biggest changes that we've seen in the last 20 years of hurricanes, is that their strength and rapid intensification has been a problem. There aren't that many more strong hurricanes per se, but we've had any number of really incredibly rapidly intensifying hurricanes. And we've had tropical storm after hurricane drop copious amounts of water. It just goes to be self-evident reasoning that a hotter planet evaporates more water, puts more abundant water in the atmosphere, which in turn provides heavier rain, which brings us more flooding. So I think in the future, carbon capture will slow some of that down. And hopefully, we won't be in a situation where we get 30 inches of rain every season from 1 or 2 or 3 storms across the USA. Good question, though. I hope I answered the geoengineering part you were asking about. If not, right back and be more specific. Okay, that's going to wrap on that. Coming up, the second half of Talk to Tom. Today's special guest is hurricane seasonal forecast expert, Dr. Phil Klotzbach from Colorado State University. Please stay with us. We'll be right back. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Talk to Tom. I'm Chief Meteorologist Tom Sorrells. Thank you so much for sticking around. I think you're going to enjoy this second half of the show. Hurricane season is underway now. And, you know, the very idea of Talk to Tom was born during a hurricane season way back in 2004. We had not had the eye of a hurricane come over downtown Orlando since way back in 1960. 1960. And then suddenly in 2004, here comes a hurricane, and people are looking at it going, it's not really going to come over Orlando, is it? And we were inundated with callers. And finally, Angel Blasquez, one of our great employees here, executive producer, Angel Blasquez, comes to me and says, hey man, why don't you just take these questions and answer them on the air? Do you feel comfortable doing that? And I went, sure, fire them up. And that's how it started. Me talking to you, the viewer at home, talk to Tom. Then it became a Facebook thing. And then my general manager loved it so much during the last season, during Hurricane Ian. He said, we really need to talk to Tom during the week. So here we are doing Talk to Tom, and the hurricane season is going. If you are familiar with my work and what we do here at the Powerful KMG, then you know every season I like to dial up the man, one of the guys who is the expert of them all in the hurricane seasonal forecast, Dr. Phil Klotzbach. He's with Colorado State University. He was the, the protege of Dr. Bill Gray, the guy who actually really spearheaded the whole thing. Welcome to Talk to Tom. This is Phil Klotzbach. Hey, Phil, how are you, man?
I'm doing well. Thanks so much for having me, Tom.
All right. You look great. It's good to see you. I'm sorry we can't be in person, but things have gotten in the way, but it's good to have you here on Talk to Tom on camera. When did you start with Dr. Gray? How long ago was that?
Yeah, so I started with Dr. Gray in graduate school. So that was back all the way in the fall of 2000. So I've been at CSU for over half my life now.
That's kind of crazy. We always called you the kid, but you're not a kid. You're a grown man, right? You're in your 40s now.
Yeah. Not a kid anymore. Getting more and more gray hair in the sideburns here.
That is awesome. Okay, well, the big news that we always have and always want to give out is what is the seasonal forecast? We've all seen it, but go ahead and address it. What is your forecast for the upcoming season?
Yeah, so we're calling for a slightly below normal hurricane season, a total of 13 named storms. Of those 13, 6 becoming hurricanes, and of those 6, 2 becoming major category 3, 4, 5 hurricanes. Those are hurricanes with winds of 111 miles per hour or greater. That's slightly below the long-term average of 14 named storms, 7 hurricanes, and 3 major hurricanes. Now, obviously, last year we had 2 major hurricanes, and obviously both were extremely impactful. Fiona, both in Puerto Rico and then up in the Atlantic provinces of Canada, and then obviously Hurricane Ian, which everyone in Florida is very, very familiar with.
Very much so. Hey, all right, so the reason it's just below normal is that everybody and their brother believes El Nino's coming back. The Pacific waters around the equatorial region are already warming. Is that one of the main reasons that you dialed it down just a smidge?
Yeah, that's right. So the big factor is we do expect El Nino this summer and fall. NOAA gives currently a 93% chance for August through October, which are climatologically the peak 3 months of the Atlantic hurricane season. About 90% of your storms occur during August to October. Now, when you have El Nino, that is warmer than normal water in the central and eastern tropical Pacific Ocean. When that occurs, it tends to increase winds high up in the atmosphere, 20, 30,000 feet, that tear apart hurricanes as they're trying to develop and to intensify. So in general, when it comes to hurricanes, El Nino is our friend. It generally increases the shear and tends to tamp down the season.
Dr. Gray was at it a long time before you, but you've been at this now since 2000. I was about to say 2020, 3 whole years. But since 2000, so you're 23, 24 seasons in. We talked about multi-decadal rages, like a 20 and 30 year periods when we go. What do you think is happening with hurricane seasons? How have they changed over the last decade? Are we on the downslope of that multi-decadal rock, or are we still in the middle? Where are we?
Yeah, so in general, the Atlantic goes through periods about 25 to 35 years characterized by more storms and then fewer storms. And so if we look back historically, the late 1800s were pretty busy. Early 1900s were fairly quiet. The middle 20s to like the late 1960s were busy. 70 to 94 was extremely quiet. And then we've been in an active period since 1995. At this point, it's hard to say. I mean, last year was near average, but the several years before that, from 2016 to 2021, all were above average hurricane seasons. Some of that likely due to both the conducive Atlantic, but also in general, this year notwithstanding, we've generally been trending more towards La Nina conditions, which is basically the opposite of El Nino. La Nina tends to favor Atlantic hurricane seasons by reducing shear. So this year, obviously, we're trending more towards El Nino. So at least from that perspective, probably the season will be a little bit on the low end, but it's hard to say whether we're actually going to be moving out of that active period anytime soon.
Yeah, I'm really hoping that we are. I remember 20 years ago when you guys said that, I went, oh, wait, that's the whole rest of my career. And here we are, still raging, still going. Let's talk about what's going on with awareness and with Ian. When that was over, we're still feeling the effects. But when the storm had finally passed, I was trying to explain to people. They asked me when I went down to the damage, they're like, how does this help you forecast? And I said, well, it really doesn't. What it does is it makes me a better communicator. Because when I say we're going to get catastrophic, generational type damage, I think people now understand what I'm talking about. Do you find people are more receptive after big storms like that to your forecasting when it's over, when we've had generational damage or catastrophic things happen?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it is the challenge is obviously, if we were having this conversation, say in 2016, we would say, hey, Florida's been in a hurricane lull. Florida had a great streak of luck, went an entire decade with no landfalling hurricanes from 2006 to 2015. So we're talking about hurricane amnesia and people not being ready. And obviously, when you've had kind of this generational kind of storm, especially in Southwest Florida, it's, you want to be prepared for the upcoming season, but, that was a horrible storm, but it's not to say, another one of those is going to be coming around anytime soon. It could potentially come around, but, basically you want to be prepared the same for every hurricane season, and not just say, use what happened last year as your guide. Basically just be prepared the same for every season. And then, if a storm does threaten, to follow the advice of your local emergency managers.
It's a hot button issue for some people. I do a thing here called Forecasting Change, where we talk about the global weirdness, how things are changing, the fact we've gotten a little bit warmer, and how much warmer we can't really stand to get without impacts. What do you think about global warming as a factor when it comes to hurricanes?
Yeah, so there's a lot of the big question a lot of people want to know is, are storms going to get worse with climate change? And often they mean, okay, how much stronger are the winds going to get? And I suspect they'll get a little bit stronger, the winds, but really kind of more the significant impacts we see from climate change. The biggest one is, from a damage perspective, we know storms in general are causing more damage just because more, as Florida's growing population is skyrocketing, a lot of people moving to the coast. So when these storms do hit, you see more damage just from growth in the population along the coast and more exposure along the coastline, more property. But with climate change, we know the sea levels are rising. And so sea level rise of a few inches doesn't matter a ton to me living in Colorado. But, when you're talking a few inches to a foot, that can make big impacts in terms of how far inland that storm surge goes when a storm does occur. Also, with increased warming, you see more rainfall from hurricanes just because a warmer atmosphere can hold more moisture. There's a lot of discussion and debate. Are storms moving slower? Some say yes, some say no. Obviously, if storms move slower, then if you have slow moving storms like Hurricane Ian, obviously we saw tremendous amounts of rainfall from that storm. Obviously, Central Florida saw a lot of really catastrophic flooding from Hurricane Ian. And then when it comes to storm frequency, we don't necessarily expect to see much change in storm frequency, but perhaps storms getting a little bit stronger with climate change. So basically maybe more of these high-end category 4 or 5 hurricanes, maybe storms also intensifying a little bit faster, kind of these rapid intensification events that we've observed in recent years.
Okay, Phil, last question. I know you're running out of time, and I could talk to you for hours. But the truth is, in the last few years, you started doing updates to your forecasting, and you started doing a weekly type thing or bi-weekly thing. Is there anything new this season you're going to do differently, or just continuing on? What are you doing?
Yeah. So we have a bunch of different things that we're doing. So as you mentioned, so we do seasonal forecasts. So we do the first one in April, then we update it in June, July, and August. While August is obviously 2 months into the hurricane season, about 95% of your major hurricane activity occurs after the 1st of August historically. So we do a final update in early August. We also do, as you mentioned, 2-week forecasts. So starting in early August through late October, we do forecasts every 2 weeks. And the reason why we're doing that is to try to pinpoint when during the next 2 weeks look busy or not. And that's somewhat the same as the seasonal forecast, but often looking at different factors, because you can have a busy season that has 2 quiet weeks in it, or you can have a fairly quiet season that has a very busy period at some point. So we're trying to kind of pinpoint that using some large scale factors, but also some things that vary on shorter term timescales. We've been revising various model inputs for this year. So that's kind of one of our big kind of new features that we're going to be that we have this year. And also my supervisor, Michael, has a grad student now who's from Puerto Rico. So she's translated everything into Spanish. So we have our press releases all translated into Spanish for this year too.
That's awesome. That's excellent. Hey, real quick, does your mom still live in the Cocoa area?
She does. Yes.
You want to say hello to her? We'll include it here if you want to say hello to her. And I'll make sure it airs.
I'll happily say hello. Hi, Mom. Looking forward to it. I'll see you tomorrow.
Awesome. All right, Dr. Phil Klotzbach from Colorado State University. Phil, I know it's the time of year when everybody wants a piece of you. Thank you for joining us here on Talk to Tom. I'll see you soon, my man.
Thanks so much, Tom. Take care.
All right, bye-bye now. Hey, you can watch Talk to Tom every Thursday afternoon between 5:30 and 6 right here on the powerful WKMG, and stream it anytime, anywhere, worldwide on News 6 Plus. Thank you for tuning in. I'll see you soon.